Before we start, I do want to mention this is part 2 to my already existing Newcastle guide I posted not too long ago. It's from Season 13, pre-Newcastle buffs, but all the tips are still very useful, so if you haven't already, I would recommend watching that video as well. This video is going to feature 10 more tips to master Newcastle. I'm currently a top 10 Newcastle player, so I have my fair share of experience with this character to say the least. Without wasting any more of your time, let's get straight into it. Tip number 1. Take the gold knockdown at all times. This season as a whole has introduced some wild changes, but I think the biggest change is the change to the gold knockdown, which has been amazing for us Newcastle players. Respawn has given Apex players all the more reason to use Newcastle by changing the gold bag res and applying it to the gold knockdown instead. Clutching with gold res on Newcastle is insanely easy to do now with the increased movement speed and the amount of health that the knockdown has. So yeah, if there's a gold knockdown around, make sure you're giving it to the Newcastle because it comes in handy a lot. Tip number 2. You don't need to move your tactical shield. Just because your tactical shield is called a mobile shield doesn't mean you need to be moving it all the time. I've found through my times playing Newcastle his shield is best used stationary. Placing it down mid-fight where it's easy to get to for you and your whole team as a piece of cover, a safe place to go back to if needed, which is very useful when pushing in the open. Moving the shield can sometimes just be a pain. You sometimes end up giving the shield to the enemy, or it just moves in a way that you didn't want it to and it ends up killing you. Trust me, I've been there, it happens a lot. I would say the shield is more useful when you place it and you just leave it. However, I will have another tip on ways to use the moving shield effectively later on. Tip number 3. Stick the res. This one is straightforward. The buffs have increased the movement speed and the turning speed for Newcastle's res. It's now way more viable to just stick the res in fights now because you can move and turn a lot quicker. You can retrieve enemies and put them in better positions further away from the enemy to heal, and the turning speed allows you to block nearly all the damage if you're quick enough, which can help you get the res off mid-fight, which is very handy, especially if you have a gold knockdown. Even if an enemy is right in your face, just stick the res. Block the damage utilizing the increased turning speed, and your teammate will be 100 HP and ready to help you win the fight. Even if you don't have gold knockdown, just stick the res anyway and then place your mobile shield down straight after, giving your teammate a little bit of cover so they're not going to get insta-killed. The enemy's going to definitely panic while you're rezzing and they're going to start choking, so use this to your advantage. Tip number 4. Bait the res. This tip is similar to sticking the res, but actually in some cases it's good to just bait the res. Something I do a lot is I start rezzing and then get the enemy in my face to stop me from finishing the res, and then I get off immediately and shoot them. Often they get jump scared and caught off guard, and you get the kill pretty easily. Something that isn't spoke about enough with Newcastle is how quickly he can pull out his gun when he gets off the res. Use this to catch people off guard. Tip number 5. Just place your ultimate. The fact that you get your walls every 2 minutes means you can afford to slam it down right in front of you mid-fight. It's way better cover and protection for you and your team if you need to heal. I will sometimes place it in the corner of buildings mid-fight so that I and my team can heal. The stun ability of the wall prevents a lot of pushes, which is really handy when an enemy team gets aggressive. There is never going to be a time where a wall isn't going to be useful for you, so if you feel you need to place it, just slam it down. Tip number 6. Use the mobile shield to push forward into a team. It's easy to control going forward, especially with the new movement speed buff. Moving your shield is something I have warned you against in the beginning, but there are times where you should use its movement feature. Now it's got increased movement speed as well, you should place your shield down and move it towards the enemy when you're making a big push. When you have that big opening damage, the shield can eat most of the damage the opposing team will do to you while you're making the push, and it's also handy if you need to reload on your way to pushing an enemy. It's best used when making pushes in choke points or open spaces. So remember, the shield has more health now as well, so it's way more useful than it used to be. Tip number 7. Place the mobile shield down mid-fight if you feel like you're losing the engagement. What I recommend doing is try jumping, or even better, sliding backwards and then placing your shield. This will throw off the enemy and most of, if not all of their clip will have gone into your shield before they realise. I like to place it, and if I feel like I'm losing the fight when I know the enemy has to reload, I'll just fully swing out from my shield and catch them off guard. More times than not, get the kill, and the enemy will just assume that I'm going to play the shield like my life depends on it now that I've got it down. Sometimes it's really good to just eat that damage and help you go from losing the 1v1 to winning the 1v1. Tip number 8. When trying to run away, place the mobile shield to block damage and then make it follow you to prevent you from dying. This doesn't always work, but it's better than being fully exposed. And a side tip to this is to try turn around, quickly place your shield facing the enemy, and then run away. Placing your shield behind you just leaves you exposed for a few seconds because the shield is curved, so if you can turn around and place it, it'll just prevent you from getting shot. Tip number 9. Pop any ultimate accels. You will have a lot more confidence on Newcastle when you have your ult. Newcastle is easier to play and is a bigger value to the team when you have your ultimate. So if you have a full inventory, just drop something, pop that ultimate accelerant, or make space for it if you already have your ultimate for the next time that you're going to need it. Because trust me, having your ultimate as regularly as you can makes playing Newcastle a lot easier. Tip number 10, heal peeking. Place the shield down at the side of cover so you can see what's going on in front of you. It'll help you make better and more informed decisions after healing, or after just taking a step back from the fight. And with how long the shield lasts, you can easily then just start moving it forward and start pushing the player right after. And yeah, that was my 10 additional tips to mastering Newcastle. Please let me know in the comments below if any of these tips were helpful and if you have any tips you didn't see in this video. Again, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I will see you in the next one. Peace out.